welcome to VoxFem. For those of you who aren't familiar, we are the VoxFem family of platforms, multi-platform radio, and I am one of your hosts today. We're very excited because this is the first time that we have our entire family, which is VoxFem International, VoxFem Italy, VoxFem Chicken India, all together in this interview. And that's one of the reasons I'm very excited. So thank you all for being here for this historic moment. And then the second reason I'm really excited is because of the featured guests we have today. Really excited to tell you about their project. And especially those of you, some people who are educators, and that would be everybody now because everybody's teaching their kids at home, who have written to us and really have loved the programming. And are looking for this programming to enrich what they're teaching their children. I would really encourage you to watch or save this program and come back later, share it, subscribe. We are VoxFem, VoxFem.org. Please visit us. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our featured guests first and then introduce the rest of us just a little bit. So our first guest is Danielle SeeWalker, and she is Hunkpapa Lakota. She's an artist, she's an activist, and she's a mother of two, and she's based in Denver, Colorado. She's also the second half and writer of the Red Road. There's an overall project called the Red Road Project, and then we're going to be talking about the book that comes out of that project today. I'm going to let them talk about that. Danielle is an enrolled member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, where she was born and raised, and she descends from the Hunkpapa Lakota chief. And I will let you pronounce properly his name, otherwise known as Sitting Bull. Because of the historical stigma often associated with being Native American, she was ashamed to identify as American Indian as a young girl, and this has fueled her passion and dedication to this project that we're going to talk about, and hopes to inspire Native American youth and Native communities in general. Today, Danielle studies and lectures on Native American culture in the 21st century and how historical and contemporary American Indian issues play a role in that. Danielle has a background in sociology, anthropology, psychology, and Native American studies at Albright College and at Kutztown University, a master's degree. Our second featured guest, this is her partner in crime on this beautiful project, Carlotta Cardana. She is from Italy, and she has been working as a photographer for over 10 years. After her studies in Italy, she began freelancing in Argentina and then in Mexico. Since 2011, she's been based in London. Her commission work involves shooting portraits, travel, and culture for magazines such as The Guardian Weekend, The Times, The Evening Standard, The New York Times, Vanity Fair, Der Spiegel, Marie Claire. In her personal practice, she looks at indigenous spirituality, the relationship between humans and their environment, and how one's identity is shaped by the space that she or he inhabits. Carlotta's work has been awarded and exhibited in numerous international galleries and festivals, and is included in the National Portrait Gallery and the Parliamentary Art Collection. A section of this series from the Red Road Project is on permanent display at the American Museum of National History in New York. I'm also going to do just a little bit longer introduction. For us, we're going to do a shorter introduction. I want to do a little longer introduction of Lorena Carbonara, because we're going to blur, we like to blur lines here at VoxFem and boxes and get rid of borders. So in this case today, Lorena is both host and interviewer, and she's also a little bit an interviewee because she is connected to this project as well. So Lorena Carbonara, first of all, she is our producer and host at VoxFem Italy, and she is a dear friend. She's also a tenure-track researcher at the University of Calabria, Italy, and a member of the international research group Smurare il Mediterraneo. And it's Unwalling the Mediterranean. She worked at the University of Bari, Italy. That's where we met, from 2005 to 2018, teaching English and translation to Anglo-American literary and visual cultures. Her main research is American Studies, Native American Studies, critical discourse analysis, and the linguistic visual self-representation of migration. She has published extensively on these subjects. And then I want to introduce to you Laura Varela. Let me see. Laura Varela is our producer and host of VoxFem Chican India, one of the newest editions. And VoxFem Chican India is by and about Chicana, Chicanx, indigenous women artists. And Laura herself is an award-winning Chicana filmmaker, producer, and director, and we're very honored to have her. Lourdes Perez will be with us today, and she is our founder and also co-host of VoxFem International. She's a Puerto Rican singer-songwriter, poet, composer, decimista, and USA Fellow in Music. And I am the final host. I'm Annette Darmada. I'm a naturopathic physician. I'm co-founder of VoxFem and host of VoxFem International and the Global Health Project. Okay, so that's our introduction. And with that, I'm going to let Lorena take it away with the questions. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Annette, for this nice introduction. And hi, Lourdes. And I would like to start asking Danielle and Carlotta, maybe Danielle can answer if she wants, about the project, the Redwood Project, because we didn't start with a book, right? You actually started working on another project. Can you tell us something about the Redwood Project?
Yeah, I can start. So the project was kind of born organically. Carlotta and I have been friends for many years, over 2 decades actually at this point. And living on 2 different continents, we make an effort to visit each other quite often, as often as possible. And during one of our visits, probably, was it 7 years ago now, we just were talking about kind of some current events that were happening in some tribal lands in South Dakota, around the Wounded Knee land. And after just kind of chatting about it, we decided, wow, we're just so tired of hearing about all these negative things that have to do around indigenous people in tribal communities on reservations. And me coming from and have family from the reservation, I realized there's so many beautiful stories that are never told, of resilience, projects that are happening within Indian country that are never told and never brought to the surface. And her and I, like literally that night, we're like, you know what, let's tell those stories. And so we decided, and we didn't really have a full concept of what the project was going to be or evolve to be into what it is today. But we just said, you know what, let's just dive in head first. And we happened to go back, we booked tickets that night, I think, flights to North Dakota. And decided to go to the reservation that I come from. There was some family ceremonial events that were going on. There was a big powwow happening that weekend. So we knew there was going to be a lot of people around and a lot of kind of things to explore. And we just kind of dove in head first. And the project is really examining what it means to be Indigenous and Native American in the 21st century, contrary to what people may think it looks like, or maybe to dispel stereotypes and microaggressions. And we really wanted to highlight and bring forth the resilience and the positive stories of so many people and communities doing amazing things that nobody ever hears about. So that's really kind of the foundation and a broad perspective of what the project's about. I don't know if Carlotta, you want to add anything?
I know, I think that was quite, complete.
Yeah. And then came the book. So how is the book related to the Redwood Project?
Well, I think the book, we always had this idea of producing some educational material. We always wanted the project to be a resource for people that wanted to learn more about Native American culture. So we had the opportunity to make this book thanks to a common friend that introduced Lorena and myself. And so we thought it would be a great opportunity to put together this educational material that we've been wanting to do for a while, using stories that we encounter while working on the Redwood Project. So they're two separate projects, but the book actually wouldn't be possible without the Redwood project.
Yes, and I can show the book, which actually came out in 2 languages, in Italian and in English.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an international project, definitely is.
So can we ask you, Lorena, at this point, as interviewee, how did that part come about? How did it end up being in both languages? How are you involved as well?
Yeah, I actually was at a wedding. I was talking to a guy that I used to know in the past. And we were talking about, my studies, and my PhD dissertation was on Native American women's autobiography. And so I was telling him about it, and he said, I have this friend, she's an amazing photographer, she lives in London, and she's working on this subject. So I just flew to London and met Carlotta. I saw the pictures are great. I fell in love with the pictures, with the work. And then it happened, and Danielle was traveling here in Italy with Carlotta. We met, and it all happened at the dinner table, having a pizza. We decided to work together on this project. I knew this small publisher in Bari, and they are really interested in this kind of projects that are special, because the topic is absolutely, in Italy it's not very common to have a book like this. And so that's the way it went. We were together on this journey. I actually, for the book, I just worked on the boxes. There are information boxes. So whenever a term comes out or a concept that needs to be furtherly explained, because, some readers may not know certain specific things, I just wrote those things that needed to be specified. That's it.
Great.
Okay, I have another question actually in mind. And it's about, because we mentioned, Carlotta just mentioned the need to find a connection with the educational world. And I know Danielle is working at the moment on some syllabi for teachers in schools. Can you say something more about this? Can you tell us about this project?
Yes, so as we were kind of promoting the book, it came out earlier this year, we were pushing it. We've gotten such a tremendous amount of feedback on it. And one thing that was consistently coming up, and even before the book happened, when people kind of got word of our project, was educators reaching out to us saying, hey, do you guys have any type of curriculum or any type of structured materials that we can utilize within, even down from, elementary level all the way up until university level? And Carlotta and I are not specialized in education in that way. And so we pocketed that, and we thought, this would be really great to do at some point. And then through this book, a woman reached out to me in Oregon, and she homeschools her children. And right now, everybody in the US is homeschooling their children. So she said, hey, there's so many things that I've learned. This book is very easily able to be read by people of all ages, including children, in the middle school type setting, and adolescents. Would you be willing to do some lectures on this? If I get a group of students together, would you be willing to do that? And I said, you know what, that's a really great idea. And a friend of mine, and actually that same week had a conversation. She is an educator and specializes in building curriculum. And she also read the book and said, hey, have you thought about putting something together with this to offer to schools and to teachers? And so she's been so gracious to be able to help me build this in the proper way. And so, yeah, it's a work in progress right now. And once we get it done, which should hopefully be in the next month or so, then we can definitely offer it to folks like the woman who reached out to me and be able to offer that.
Yeah, great. Because, looking at the cover of the book and thinking about the title, Still Here, A Past to Present Insight of Native American People and Culture, I don't know, reading this, we assume that the Native American question is still a question then.
Yeah, it is. When thinking about the title of the book, it's not something that came up first. It was let's build this book and the content. And then I sat down and just thought about what would be appropriate to call this. And still here came up because as Carlotta and I had been traveling and doing a lot of field work and working in various Native communities and tribes around the country, one thing that people had said consistently was, when we asked them the question, what do you want somebody that knows nothing about Native American people or culture, what would you say to those people if you could say one thing? And a lot of people said, we want them to know that we're still here. And so that really resonated with me, and I thought it was very appropriate for this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. And Carlotta, what about your perspective as a photographer, an Italian photographer traveling to the US and doing this kind of work? What about your art? We would like to know something more about your art.
Well, it's complicated because I am a white woman talking about a culture that is not mine. So, you know, and this has happened a lot in history, and that tends to be the mainstream narrative still. So it's not something that I approach lightly. There's been a lot of thinking in how to approach this project. But also it kind of came quite natural because my approach to photography, not to just this project, is quite collaborative in the sense that I do spend time with my subjects before photographing them. I don't go to a place or to a shoot with an idea in mind, thinking I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and, you know, with everything planned out. It's quite the opposite, actually. It's more about learning about the person that sits in front of me and their history and their story, and, you know, talking about the shoot itself, like in very practical ways. Like, we're going to take a portrait, and what's it going to look like, and in what way do you want to be represented, and what do you think, what's a place that is meaningful for you and that represents you and that it's part of your story. And you know, we talk about all the details, and, you know, what are you going to wear, what does that mean for you? And so a lot of the decisions are actually taken by the person that I'm photographing. And of course, being the photographer, I'm the one who frames and the one who decides what's in the picture and what's out of the picture. But I try to do that respectfully. And I think through the years of working on this project and learning more and more about the culture and spending hours and hours talking with Danielle about stuff that we would encounter and processing it as we go, that has given me a better idea of how I want to photograph my subjects. And I think my way of photographing the subject has changed through the years as well, because it's a process. It's always a process, and nothing is fixed in my photography or in life in general, actually. So that's the way I approach my work, and I always think of it as being collaborative. And I think in terms, I mean, for people that are interested in photography in general, I think it's worth to mention that everything that I do is shot on film with a big bulky camera. So it's not, the camera is heavy. I'm not looking at the subject. I'm looking down into the camera. So that creates a different relationship with the person that I'm photographing. I think it's way less obtrusive. If we think about cameras in general, they're up in your face, they're covering your face. They're quite, you know, they're sort of an invasion for the person that I'm photographing. But with this camera, it's much slower process. And again, you know, it's different. And people, it just creates a different vibe. So that helps a lot for obtaining what I want to look for, what I want to do for this project, which is a collaboration between me and the person that I'm photographing, so that the person that I'm photographing is also, in a way, a storyteller.
Oh, thank you very much. Beautiful. I'm done with my questions.
Hi, Carlotta, Danielle. Thank you so much for being here. And just wanted to say hi to Lorena, our counterpart in Italy, and of course, my beloved Annette and Lourdes. Thank you for allowing me to be here. So I think that what you were discussing your process, and I think that kind of leads me to my question, which is like, how do you both as an artistic team go about establishing that trust with a community and making them want to participate in your project?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think this has changed through the years. I remember at the beginning when we were starting out, I mean, we started out photographing Danielle's family, so the trust was already there. And actually, I don't think at least that I was seen as an outsider, as a photographer coming in to photograph the community. It was more about, oh, this is Danielle's friend, and she happens to be taking pictures. But then for the second trip that we did, that was actually a commission from Marie Claire. That was a bit more difficult because nobody knew about the project, so we had to reach out to a bunch of people saying, hi, we're blah blah blah, and we're doing this, and it wasn't easy. Some people, they just wouldn't respond. Some other people thought it was a joke. So it was a lot of work. While on the field, it happened that some people weren't very comfortable sharing their stories or sharing some information because I was not from the community. I'm not from the community. But then through the years, that has changed in the sense that the project is now known a little bit within Native American communities, and also Native American communities are quite close. So now it's easier to say because people know about the project, or they know someone who's been in the project, and now we actually get people that recommend other people, so now it's a lot easier. And also Danielle is from these communities, so I think it makes a big difference, and I'll leave it to Danielle to expand on this.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's definitely a guard and a wall up when it comes to approaching Native American communities and people. And that stems from, I think, just constant years of their stories being told by a non-Native person from a different perspective instead of them being a voice. And a lot of the times it's negative stories. It's them talking about all the issues that reside and are encompassing in their communities. And I think they're, overall, they're just tired of it. They're tired of these, the media coming in and exploiting them and making them look a certain way, which brings down the morale and what am I trying to say here? The confidence of their youth, especially the youth. They grow up with, thinking that they are worthless and they're, don't have a lot going for them. So there's definitely a guard up when media approaches. And I think when we approached this project, and Carlotta and I weren't always together as a team, and she may be making calls or visiting with folks, they knew she was non-Native and she just had a camera and a notebook in her hand, and they, what else are they thinking? So it definitely was challenging. But again, like kind of what Carlotta said, because I come from the community, there's a little bit more trust there. So the dynamic definitely changes if I'm there and we're there as a team. So that's that.
So I just have a follow-up then for Danielle, because, I'm Chicana, Mexican-American. We're indigenous to this land here in the Southwest, but we're also considered Latinx, right? So I wanted to ask you, do you have advice for people in the Latinx community, the Chicano community, who are starting their journey to decolonization? Perhaps many have been detribalized for hundreds of years already. Mm-hmm. And they're just starting to, that journey.
Yeah, I don't come from the Latinx community, but what I could say is that, there was no borders before colonization. And so I think we need to, first of all, wipe that mindset out. People that are Latino, Latinx, they are Native American as well. We're all indigenous. There was no borders. It's a very colonized concept. So I would say that just trying to find a community and not do this alone, and connect with people and find people that are in similar situations as you, and really approach it that way. Everybody's kind of online these days and forming groups and communicating that way. And we live in a very digital world where communication is very easy for people that live within distances of each other. So I would say connecting with people is probably the first and foremost thing that I would approach it as.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I add something on this topic?
Absolutely.
Because I think that to bring this, what we just discussed on a general level, I think it would be beneficial for all of us, wherever we come from and whatever land we're on, to understand a bit how we got here and learn about more about our ancestors, for example. And in Europe, because we haven't really been colonized and oppressed, we were the colonizers and oppressors. I think what happened here is that we don't have that connection, strong connection to our culture and to our ancestors. And I notice that when I am working on the Redwood Project, or when I'm talking to Native American people, they can go back hundreds of years to their ancestors. They know what their ancestors were wearing 200 years ago. They know what dances they were dancing. And I'm like, I have no idea, you know? And so to me, this project was also an incentive to kind of dig a bit more into my personal history. And I think that's beneficial for everyone to just learn about where we come from, not just if we were, we're all indigenous in a way or another. Well, I guess not, but I mean, like, I'm mainly from the country that my ancestors are from. So in a way, I am indigenous to that place, but whether or not you belong to a place, I think it's beneficial for everyone to do a bit of digging into their ancestry.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you, Laura. So I have a question, and kind of following up in the same vein. We've already talked a little bit about just that question of when art or art journalism is based on the life of a real person, right? As opposed to if you're creating fictional characters, there's still an element of approaching things with respect. But I think what we're talking about is the care that you have to go into this type of a project, especially when the person is a living person. And then we're talking about that process, but I just want to take it a little further and talk about the control over the outcome or the product, because I think that can be controversial and has been throughout history as well. Especially in communities that have been harmed and invisibilized. So, Carlotta, you were saying, and this is actually for both because it has to do with the writing and the photograph. But in terms of the final outcome, was there any part of the process where, I don't know, say that something was left out because there was an objection to it, or do you feel like you took care of the collaboration happened during the process, and then you two sort of decided on the final outcome? I think it's something important for many of us who do, who collect oral histories. For young people who are just getting into this, I think it would be great to hear, how you completed that part.
Yeah, of course. For what regards to photography, I tried to share the images that I want to use for the project with the person that I photographed before I make any public use. And of course, it hasn't happened, but if someone would be like, I don't think it happened that I remember, maybe if Danielle remembers, but if somebody would be like, I'm not comfortable with this picture, I don't like the way I look, blah, 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 of course, I wouldn't use it. I mean, it happened before in other projects that I've been working on. People weren't happy with the way they were looking in the images for, like, sometimes it was like frivolous things like my hair's not right. And I was like, that's fine, we can either do a reshoot or I'll just won't use the picture. So in that sense, to me, that's actually very important, to have the person being proud of the image, that it's the outcome. And I just, like, ideally I would want an image that people would be happy to hang in their homes. So it hasn't happened, but if it did happen, I would have no problem just taking the image out.
And to kind of add on to what she's saying, kind of being the person that's watching her photograph is really interesting and fascinating, because she really does allow the subject to kind of take creative control on what they wear, how they do their hair, even down to the place of where they want to be photographed, whether it's in their own bedroom or in a significant place outdoors. Carlotta really gives those people the control to really be comfortable in where they want to be photographed and how they're photographed. So I think that's really, really interesting. And yeah, I can't think of a time where somebody has said, don't use my photograph, because she does allow them such control on what that image's outcome looks like. And in terms of the writing piece, that can get a little bit more hairy, I think, in terms of, making sure that somebody's name is properly spelled, whether or not they want their name published in their traditional languages. how their tribal representation is portrayed. Some people belong to multiple tribes, and they're really sensitive on, hey, you need to make sure that you include all of this information. So it's really just ensuring that there's a lot of accuracy when it comes to names, places, things like that, and just how things are worded. We've had a little bit more sensitive feedback on that.
Okay, that's
Yeah, and I'd like to add that it's always in progress, especially for the writing, because I see Danielle doing the writing, and it's always a matter of, you know, maybe some pictures that we took, I don't know, 5-7 years ago. And, you know, we have a caption that was written 5 or 7 years ago, but we're always updating that because it's like, oh no, that person's not called that anymore because they're not married, or like, oh no, this person, you know, has changed. So, you know, we always try to keep the information updated as much as possible as well. And it's nice to see that some things weren't shared in writing, but it's because people weren't comfortable in having some parts of their story like fully public, and they were like, oh, this is more off the record. And to me, that's actually a great thing, because it means that those people had they felt like comfortable to share some very private stuff with us that wasn't, you know, for the project. So we do have this compartmentalization. We're like, okay, this is off the record, and this we're sharing as, you know, human beings and connecting, but this is not for the project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and accuracy was also extremely important for the Italian translation. It's a huge thing translating Native American writings because of this. Because we also have to translate it not only into another language, but into another culture completely. So that was a big thing also.
Yeah.
So what it sounds like as well is that it's not that the challenges go away or that there can't even be mistakes made, but the approach of, you know, being respectful and keeping the collaboration, keeping the fact that people feel like they have control, just means that it's a work in progress, and you're able to get through it respectfully. Is that how you all felt about that?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's really important for researchers and all sorts of artists who do this work. I have another question. Since our work at VoxFem, our mission at VoxFem is a very simple mission. We set out that we wanted to find and feature one singer-songwriter, visual artist, filmmaker, and change maker, and you certainly are change makers and artists, from every nation and occupied territory on Earth. So we may be busy for a long time, but
ambitious.
or not, because people, it's growing very quickly, and people are sending in. You have to know about this person, right? And so what we want to know, given that that's our mission, to amplify the voices of those women and those who identify as female on the gender spectrum. Can you tell us a story? Can you tell us one of the stories about one or more of the women that you feature in the book? Maybe something that she told you, that she like you said, some things are on the record, off the record, something that they wanted to be known or seen more widely.
Gosh, I mean, there's so many, and it's so hard to choose. And one thing that's really special about this community that I belong to, Native in different tribes, is that we've always been a very matriarchal society, and women are the forefront backbone of the communities. So we've met some amazing women. I can't even, it's hard to even choose. You know, when it comes to the activism piece, we've seen a lot of women on the front lines taking lead. For instance, Standing Rock. I come from Standing Rock. There was a huge controversy a few years ago with a pipeline and things like that. That was all women led. When we went to California and we worked with the Winnemem Wintu people, they have a traditional chief that is a woman, and she took a step back but wanted women to lead this journey on what they were doing and what they were trying to achieve in bringing their salmon back. So very women led. I think one person that I'm kind of biased to, that she's so humble. She would never, she never puts herself out there as being a leader or, you know, here's what I'm doing in my community. And I think I admire that about her. And her name is Sarah Jumping Eagle. And she, is a doctor, but also a very, very passionate activist in standing up for the earth, for children, for women, for her community. And she's always on the front line when it comes to saving land. When there was a point in time where they were trying to sell a very historical, spiritual, ceremonial place in the Black Hills where our people come from. And she personally raised over $1 million to have this saved. She's been arrested several times. I don't know. I mean, she probably maybe is not something that we want to highlight, but she will go to the ends of anything that it takes to stand up for what is right and what she believes in. And I really admire that. She's an amazing mother, a doctor, activist, and a powerhouse within the community I come from.
Tell us her name again.
Sarah Jumping Eagle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
On this note, I would like to add that because your question was whether somebody ever told us, I want to highlight this. And Danielle mentioned that Sarah Jumping Eagle would never tell you. And it's something that I've noticed a lot within Native American women and Native Americans in general. It's their humbleness, and I don't think anybody would come up and tell you, oh, you need to know about this thing that I'm doing, which as a European I see as a typical American thing, to kind of be like, wow, I'm doing this fantastic thing, that you got to hear about. But Native American and Native American women especially, they would never do that. And that's something that I've noticed, and I really like it's their humbleness. And it's always somebody else who highlights the work of other people. And I think that connects with the idea again of community and supporting each other. It should be more about supporting our peers and the people around us rather than try to highlight our own work.
Absolutely, that's a very good point. And in that same spirit, within what they do tell you on the record, did you find that there were things that they wanted you to know about tradition or about family or about the community itself that that they wanted to highlight, not specifically about themselves as individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in many of the conversations that I recollect is that they always lead with what the community is doing, what somebody else is doing, and that you really got to kind of pry it out of them. Well, tell me what you're doing. Humility is one of the 7 virtues that the Lakota women or community, everybody, the Lakota culture, practices and teaches from a very young age. And so humility is a really big deal within the culture that I come from anyway.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And actually, I would like to add that a lot of things are not in the project, but it was a decision taken before taking the pictures. So ceremonies, we've been invited to a lot of ceremonies, a lot of private moments, and we went to those events as Carlotta and Danielle, not as the Redwood Project. So camera was away, notebook was away. So there are a lot of stuff that we lived or that we experienced that it's not in the project because it wasn't appropriate for the project. And I'd like to highlight that Native Americans are protective of their culture in a right way, because they've been cultural appropriation, especially since the 60s and 70s, when all of a sudden it became cool to be Native American and everybody kind of wanted the style. So right now what happens is that they're very protected and it's not really understood. I've had people reaching out to me and asking me, certain things where I had to respond, this is not appropriate. I can't, put you in touch with these people. And people tend to be like, well, but, for example, the Buddhists do da 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 da. And they're like, people don't understand the effects of oppression. And that's something that has to be respected, this privacy and this protection that they have for their culture.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. This is so moving and so beautiful that you're here and that you're sharing with us everything you've learned and shared and done. It's really moving. Thank you so much on behalf of VoxFem and all of us. So one of the things, I have a couple of questions. My first question is, what does it mean for each one of you to be working together across geographies? Like, how does that feel, or how does that develops, either on a daily, basis, or just as a way of like being in different continents and having this incredible affinity and intimacy in presenting this project?
Well, number one, it really sucks because it's my, not only my colleague on this project, but she's my best friend and considered a sister. So having that distance between us isn't always fun. And as I mentioned early on, we've been friends for over 2 decades. And before digital communication was really a thing. So there would be times where we wouldn't be able to speak or see each other for months at a time, even maybe years at a time. But whenever we were together, things just picked up like it was yesterday. So definitely within the past several years, with communication being so accessible in these types of formats and ways, we've been able to keep touch. And even this year, we had a lot of plans to collaborate together, to be in Europe together, doing some work with Lorena, and also here in the US doing some more field work. That just obviously got put on pause. And there was a period of time over, during the lockdown where we were in communication every day for hours at a time. And that's just thanks to this digital age that we live in. So we've definitely been able to stay in contact and work very intimately together, even despite the distance.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is very difficult, as Danielle says, especially because because we're very far in different time zones. And, there was a time when I was living in Asia, which was even more difficult, because I remember there was only like 2 hours a day where we could talk because I was asleep when she was awake and vice versa. But aside from that, we are in constant contact. Maybe not every day, but sometimes it's every day. Sometimes it's every couple of hours, depends what's happening. But as Danielle said, it's always a continuous conversation. It never feels like there's a break. And I think because we know each other so well, sometimes it feels like our minds are in sync because we think of the same thing at the same time and we message each other at the same time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, thanks to technology, it's great. But I remember there was a time where we could only exchange letters and that take weeks, and it was just like you kind of lose the momentum by the time you get the letter and you find the time to reply. But yeah,
that's beautiful. I have one more question, unless somebody else has a question. This is a beautiful project, and it's an epic project, and very much a needed work. Your relationship is beautiful, respectful. The outcome of it, therefore, is also beautiful and majestic. As an artist, when I take oral histories, and even when I interview my own people, Puerto Rican, I always learn something more than what I came to do, especially also when you interview your own people. You always come out learning more that you didn't know. So what did this project teach you? And what do you hope that us as readers can get from it, from the gift and the story that you're giving us?
Well, I'll start. One thing that that I wanted to personally learn on this journey was kind of expanding outside of my bubble. So I came from one tribe and kind of didn't really expand or travel outside of that growing up. This is all I knew. So when we decided to explore this project, I wanted to understand how other communities, other Native communities, what they're facing, and really just kind of sit back, learn, and observe. And what I found is that a lot of the things that I was internally having conflict on, which I found that a lot of people do. And one of those things is loss of identity. We, when we were colonized and my ancestors were colonized, when I say they, the US government and European settlers came in, they wanted to assimilate Native American people by taking away their culture, their language, their clothing, everything. And they wanted to then just assimilate. And there's still a lot of aftermath and residual scars that exist from that today. And there's been some huge initiatives and wonderful projects that are being refocused in the past 50 years on language revitalization, bringing back our ceremonials, which were banned and outlawed here in the US for many centuries. And so we're really just starting to revive who we are again and reconnect, because that has been a really big problem within Indigenous communities, is that you aren't sure who you are and where you fit in. You come from these places where your grandma told you, you know, this is who you are, don't forget who you are, yet you have to exist in this colonized world in US. And so there's always been an internal struggle for me, and I didn't really understand it until I got much older. And this project has really opened my eyes to say, wow, not only am I feeling this way, but so many other people are feeling this way. Here's how I can approach it. Here's how I can start healing. And kind of that is what I taken personally out of the project. What I hope other people, you know, you mentioned the second half of the question is what do readers and people that learn about the Red Road Project, what do I hope that they take away from that is learning something new that they didn't know before and communicating that out, putting it out into the world, because I think knowledge is definitely power, and the perspective specifically on Native American people, culture, has been taught and told to us for many years from a non-Native perspective. History is often told from the winner's perspective, and the winner in this case is the US government, the white settlers, the colonizers, and it's always told from that perspective. And I think it's time that we have to take that back and we tell the story from our perspective. We should own our own stories. And so that's what we're trying to do. Everybody that we interview that is part of this project, we retell their stories in their own words. We don't want to reword it and tell it in our perspective. So we hope that people take something away from that and learn something new that they didn't know before and share that with other people. That's what I hope anyway.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
When I got into this project, or when we started the project, my motivation or what I wanted to get from it was to learn a bit more about Native American culture, because I realized that what I knew just actually came from stereotypes or what you learned from, you know, Hollywood. And so all my knowledge on Native Americans was wrong. And, you know, I came from a place of ignorance. So I wanted to get out of that place. And the project for me was a learning progress. And then while I was doing the project, you know, the more I did it, the more I realized the little I knew, not just about Native American culture, but about myself. And there's been some moments that were really eye-openers in terms of understanding my own privilege, and also in terms of understanding, I feel like I have kind of this duty as a photographer working editorially. I have access to mainstream media, and so I feel like it was my duty to do this project. And we noticed it while working on the project a lot, that people were telling us how good it was to see something like this, and it was an inspiration for them. And we got to a point, Danielle and I, where we were like, you know, we started this project we had our own reasons, and they were mainly personal reasons, but now we kind of have to do it because it needs to exist. So it was realization how it is important for me, and this is what I hope people understand as well, that we need to improve the world around us. And I'm not talking about making big changes. I'm just talking about, you know, do whatever you can. You know, I have the skills of photography and I have the contacts, so I can do this. And I feel like it's my duty to do so these days, especially to just like try to improve our surroundings. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, it can be our immediate community, like say hi to your neighbor, like, do you know what your neighbor's name is even, you know? And so yeah, so I think that's, and what I would want people to take from the project, and also this idea of like knowing where you are and knowing where you come from. And another thing that I'd like to add is that this project was, I think it changed me in unexpected ways. Like when I started this project, or like after starting this project, I became vegetarian, for example. I had a better understanding of my impact on the world. And I think that comes from understanding the Native American relationship with the environment. and taking part in ceremonies and getting a different understanding of myself and myself in the world. So I made some decisions, including going vegetarian for environmental reasons, and also my spirituality, I think, has developed. I mean, I was growing up in a Catholic country and not in a Catholic family, but you know, I was always like, religion, stay away from it, you know. But just getting a different understanding of being spiritual doesn't necessarily mean going to church and just like, you know, having people telling you you're gonna go to hell, you need to do blah blah blah. You know, it's not about that. And just so it's been really enriching for me to do this project.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anything that we haven't asked that you would like to share?
Well, do you have a few days?
We could talk to you forever. Don't be careful what you ask for Carmen.
I would just say that the Red Road Project is a continuous working project. So if people are interested in following, they can, you know, visit our website, email us, follow us on social media to kind of stay updated on what's going on with that. So,
What is the website again?
redroadproject.com.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would like to add that the book is available, as I said, in Italian and English. In Italian, it's Siamo ancora qui, il passato e il presente dei nativi americani, while in English it's Still Here and Past to Present Insights of Native American People and Culture. And we would like to thank the publisher, Dots Edizioni, a small publisher in Bari. I think it's good to say thank you to them to jump, because they jumped in this project with us.
And how do people get the book in both in the United States and abroad?
You can order it online through the main channels, but also if you'd like to support us, you can drop us an email and we'll send it to you.
That's the way we like to. That's the way we like to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I wanna say right now to those who, because when this is broadcast, those of you who are watching during the broadcast, we have a special thing that we want to do today. So the first 5 people who comment down below, who comment and with any comment that you loved them, you love us, and also that you share. I want to see that you shared this information, because it's important information. We want to get it out there. If you the first 5 to comment and share, we're going to send you the book, and you can tell us whether you want Italian or English, and we'll order that directly from you, from VoxFem. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yes. And we encourage those of you, if you're not one of the 5, we encourage you to do it on your own. And just one more thing I want to say, because we are the place where we broadcast from many places, obviously, for VoxFem, but we're mainly focused in San Antonio. That's our base. San Antonio, Texas, as it's known now, of the place which we also consider to have no borders. We want to acknowledge the original caretakers of the land here, the Estocna and the Come Crudo and the Coahuiltec nation. And also I always acknowledge the Chicana, Chicanx, Chicano nation. This is their home as well. So we are grateful that we are here on that land. And we want to thank you all for tuning in. Today we have been talking with Danielle SeeWalker and Carlotta Cardana, and I'm so happy to have my beloveds Lorena Carbonara. Say hello, please, from VoxFem Italy as we sign off.
Yeah, hello everybody, and goodbye everybody.
And signing off to Laura Varela from VoxFem Chicken India.
Thank you for being with us.
Okay.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure, and thanks for everyone who's listening and watching us too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to be signing off.
Okay, so let's talk tomorrow again.
Collaboration.
Thank you. Thank you. Signing off. I'm going to be looking at the comments. I'm going to be looking for who gets the books. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
colo simple ni mo cuicatica cual